four Ralph Kellogg's. That's a lot of Ralph Kellogg's. Does anybody else see that? Okay. Hopefully he gets it figured out. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'll just go ahead and start now that we got those few little things fixed up. But anyways, my name is Bree. I'm a graduate assistant at the Service Learning Academy. And this is going to be the last event in a three-part series that we were doing to target first generation students so they can learn some of their assets in service learning and interviewing skills, things like that. That's what we're going to do today. So give me a second to share my screen. And we're just going to start by giving a brief little overview of what SLA is. And then actually we are going to, and then I'm going to kick it over to Joe Hayes from the UNO Academic and Career Development Center. And then we're just going to do a little intro to a couple of the employers that we invited here. I'm really excited for you to get to know them. And then we're actually going to get the chance to do some practice interviews in small groups for about 25 to 30 minutes, which I'm also really excited about. Hopefully you can get a lot out of that. And then after those practice interviews, we're just going to debrief with the whole group. It'll take about 5 minutes and, then we'll call it a day. So without further ado, I'm going to get started on the little overview. Just give me a second to, there we go. Oops, no, don't want prevent. There we go. Okay, sorry about that. So we are the Service Learning Academy. Like I said, my name is Bree. I'm a graduate assistant, and the Service Learning Academy facilitates university and community-wide partnerships, develops and collaborates on community-based research, and supports rigorous service learning courses in pursuit of UNO's metropolitan mission to transform and improve the quality of life locally, nationally, and globally. Service learning defined is going to be a method of teaching that combines what is learned in the classroom instruction with meaningful community identified service. So like it just says here, students are going to get the chance to take what they learn beyond those four walls and apply it to, so they can learn those skills and also give back to the community. There are 3 types of service learning. I'll just go over them really quickly. First is our traditional model. So that's going to be when a university partner, such as like a class at UNO and a partner in the Omaha community and organization, they partner together, come together for a service learning project. And the P through 16 model is basically the same thing, except we're also incorporating a preschool through 12th grade class. And then our last model is philanthropic giving. I think it's more of a newer model that we've been implementing through our Maverick Philanthropy Initiative. And I think from the last time I heard, it was about $24,000 that we were able to push back into the community through our philanthropic giving. So yeah, that's pretty cool in my opinion. Today, what we're going to be doing is basically learning how we can use our assets that we learn in our service learning classes for our interviewing skills. And then we're going to get to practice and try it out a little bit. The last session, the panelists discussed the things that they notice in service learning students when they're interviewing them or when they're working for them, when they're getting to know them, networking, things like that. Those soft skills, communication, open-mindedness, respect for diverse communities. They identified those assets and thought they were really important. So hopefully we can build off them and learn how we can incorporate them into our interviewing skills. So yeah, without further ado, I think I'll kick it right off to Joe. And if you have any questions, just let us know in the chat or say it out loud. But yeah, go ahead, Joe.
Yep, thanks, Bree. So right now we're gonna go into another deck I will have here, and how I like to start things off. Can you see that, right? Just want to make sure we're looking at good head nods. I love that. I'm Joe Hayes, Associate Director, Career Development and Employer Relations out of the Academic and Career Development Center. And today we're going to talk about how to leverage and make for strong interviewing, talking about our service learning. But it would be remiss of me to not mention some of our own services as well. So for students, we work with them with all students to find those experiences that you want, right? Jobs, internships, etc. On a one-to-one scale, we can do webinars. We do all sorts of things. We do resources on the resume, the cover letter, the interview, in which we'll be talking about today, and so many more. So if you ever are looking to have a one-on-one appointment with a career coach, you can make an appointment in Handshake. Every student has access to it. You log in with your net ID and the normal stuff you would for Canvas and other systems, and you log in and you create a one-on-one conversation, right? So today we're going to focus on interviewing, and we're going to break it down, and I'm going to be talking fast today because I want what we do today is to put what we learn here into practice. Okay, so interviewing, we're going to kind of summarize how to prep for interviews in 5 stages, with really the bulk of it being step 3, and we'll get to that. But with any interview, what we need to know is we need to prepare in advance, right? We need to know all we need to know about the interview so we can be ready, so we can put ourselves and make sure that we are putting our best self forward. So we need to think about like how we're going to dress, right? We're going to figure out when the interview starts. About a year ago, we didn't talk so much about video interviews, right? Virtual, but now we do. Now we need to, that's another element we need to think about through our interview practice. We need to think about things like our technology, right? Do we have good bandwidth? How is the lighting and things like that? So we need to take our element of preparation maybe to even a different light, maybe never that we haven't done before. So for instance, we need to be aware, are we in the witness protection program? I don't know, maybe we don't need to. So we need to be aware of our lighting, right? We need to be aware of our background, right? This is my daughter's unicorn, I love it. But is it always appropriate maybe for an interview? We got to ask those hard questions. Backgrounds are super fun, but are they super appropriate? And then, of course, understanding our industry norms. What are we going to wear at what point, et cetera. So I'm not saying, you have to wear, one attire over the others. It's knowing your industry norms to be ready, because impressions can make a difference, right? That goes along also with phone interviewing too. So one of the great things about video interviewing and phone interviewing is that you can have your notes off to the side. You can write some things down. You can have your resume there with you to help guide you in terms of those moments when you may be thinking, oh, I kind of am drawing a blank on this experience. Maybe I can look subtly for this. So it's understanding the environment that you're going to be in. And that's easy. Those are things that we just need to kind of take a moment, pause, think about what type of interview it will be, what type of format, and how we can prepare. So then other things we need to think about, not just the words we speak, but our body language, et cetera, right? So there was a study by UCLA researchers in the 70s that found that messages received often depend very little on the words that are spoken, but are more so on the voicing, how you say it, body language, etc. Right? So communication, while we're talking about how we can communicate our service learning, it's not only on the words, it's kind of everything that goes into it, right? Because people take in messages from many different angles. So when interview questions are going to be occurring, oftentimes we hear from students that interviews are kind of nerve-wracking. There's that scale of, a conversation, networking, so like networking, we hear that word interviewing, and that kind of often connotates some scary moments, some nerves. But if we're with our friends and, doing things in service learning, right? We're having conversations, we're talking, that's easy. That's what we want interviews to become, more on that conversation end of the spectrum and less on the nervousness and anxiety. So when interview questions come about, it's okay to take a pause, right? To say, great question. Let me think about that for a second, so we can gather our thoughts, and go from there. We want to, be positive. We want to smile. We want to try not to fidget as much. I have like an exercise ball that I bounce on at times. So like, don't use that during an interview, right? Because you'll be bouncing like that character on Winnie the Pooh, Tigger, right? Isn't he? He was always bouncing. My kids look at that and watch that a lot. Okay, so then body language is key and all that stuff, the kind of the nonverbals that go into communication. And here's kind of what we're going to focus on today, though. Here's the bread and butter, if you will, the meat and the potatoes, any other metaphor that you'd like to include there. So we want to tell a story and give examples. So in our past, the previous service learning workshop we did here, we did a little scenario on how to articulate your resume, the skills that you have on your resume through a formula. And we're going to do the same thing here with interview prep as well. And most of the questions that students and people will get in interviews will be behavioral based questions. So these are questions that are assessing your past behavior, because that will be the best predictor of your future success, right? So that's what we're going to really focus on here today. And our framework that we're going to use, and there are many out there, right? But the one that we subscribe to in ACDC is the STAR method, because a lot of employers, they kind of go to that philosophy and framework as well. So the STAR method is an acronym for situation or task, right? The action that you took, and then the result, okay? So think of this as the beginning, the middle, and an end to a story. Okay. So in the situation, and I put a little percentages next to these. So that's, a rough estimate of how long we should maybe be speaking about that with each interview question. So don't take that as a hard thing, but just kind of a general rule of thumb. So in this situation or task, describe maybe a problem or situation you face, and you want to be specific, right? The action, what specifically was it that you did? So we want to get back to that question that was asked. And then don't leave the interviewer hanging like, well, what happened? Complete the story and let them know of your successes. So because you did X, this happened. And what we're trying to draw out is your strength, your accomplishment that you've done through service learning or really any other experience, right? So that's what we want to focus on today. There are other frameworks out there. So if you're like, STAR, I've never heard that. That's not so familiar. You may be familiar with the PAR method, right? If you hear some banging right now, my neighbors are doing some construction. So that is the loud earthquake sounding noise that's happening at the moment. So there's also the PAR method, problem, action, results. One person also told me the EARL method, example, action, result, learning. What we want to do is make sure that when a question is presented to us, saying like, how do you do this? Or how good are you at this? It's not just, I'm great, I'm excellent, trust me, right? We need to back it up with evidence, with action, etc. Okay, so tell a story from your past to prove it. So examples of these, you may hear questions like, tell me about a time you took initiative. Describe a time you were part of a team. Tell me about a time when you've had to deliver bad news. In which case, that's super straightforward. They're asking you that, right? However, other times questions may come at you that seem that they're kind of disguised and it's not as straightforward. So how comfortable are you using Revit? Maybe an architectural engineering type tool, right? Or how do you handle stress? So I don't get stressed. I'm just not a stressful person. I don't get stressed like that. That doesn't tell us as much, right? But if we were to use the PAR method, the STAR method, what we're going to be using today, then we can tell the beginning, middle, and an end to a story, and not only show and state that maybe we handle stress in a good way, but we prove it through that example. And that's how we can differentiate ourselves from others. So you may get lots of common questions. A first one is often, tell me about yourself. This is kind of that elevator pitch. We want to focus on the positive, the things that you've done in the present, the past, and what you want to do in the future as well. We don't need to share personal information. I'm X amount of years old. I have these, kids, whatever. That stuff. Keep it to the job focus. There's several other questions. You never know where it's going to come in what angle, but sometimes a lot is focused on strengths, maybe weaknesses, and then kind of closing arguments. Why should we hire you? And it's kind of a reverse type. Tell me about yourself. So to summarize everything. So we'll just focus on one of those here today, maybe the greatest weakness. And I like to coach people up on this kind of patent pending approach to the greatest weakness, right? The strength we kind of have a little more knowledge of. We kind of have a sense of ourselves. Maybe we've done Clifton strengths, so we cannot say those strengths per se, but we can use them as examples, right? To get us to start thinking about ourselves. But when it comes to the weakness, we've often seen some struggles here. So I just want to take a second here to go over. And here's the patent pending situation. So we want to be upfront and genuine, right? The second step is obvious. It can't be detrimental to the position. And then the third thing, and this is the most important thing, what are you doing to overcome and address that challenge? So, maybe two examples. One that comes to mind, if it was a student seeking a Java developer position and applying for that, a weakness would not be, I'm not good at Java. I don't know Java, right? That's detrimental, right? Another one could be, maybe public speaking, but then you state, what are you doing to overcome it? So maybe it's as simple as, in class, I raise my hand. I challenge myself to ask one question per day so I feel more confident. And that's what I'm doing to overcome this. So it's not about the weakness. It's about what are you doing to overcome that? Okay. Just a few couple other things. So expect the unexpected in interviews. You never know. So we're focused on behavioral, but sometimes it could be analytical. It could be, what questions do you have for me? And that's it, right? So you want to come prepared with questions, or otherwise that's a short conversation. There could be analytical type questions like, how many diapers are used in New York City in a given day, right? And they just want to see the thought process. What are you thinking? See the logic, and play along with this, right? And maybe some technical. There could be some coding questions, etc. And finally, as I'm rifling through this interviewing, step 5, we want to make sure, again, and this kind of goes with the prep in advance too, but we want to do the research and follow up. So in ACDC, we subscribe to some software that you could use 24/7 from the comfort of wherever you're at. We have a product called Big Interview where you could practice a virtual interview, and an individual will ask you a question, and it's super specific to your industry. It could be social work, it could be technology, it could be business, it could be the arts. You get specific questions, there'll be a countdown, it'll utilize your camera, and then you can record your answer. You can even share it with people, or if you're brave enough, listen to yourself. And if you're like me, you just count how many times you say and it's dreadful. Okay. And actually, I think it counts it for you, and it gives you an AI score, etc. So other resources out there as well. And then afterward, we want to make sure that we send thank you notes to those that you interview with, right? Oftentimes it's the small things that separate between getting the offer and not getting the offer. I worked at a global consulting firm in New York City for many years, and we had a hard and fast rule of, if someone, maybe it sounds silly, if someone didn't send a thank you note and it wasn't about our time and how important we are, which I think we are important, everyone is, but if they didn't, we would not reciprocate with an offer, because we felt that if they can't advocate for themselves, how are they going to advocate for clients? Okay. So it's also just a good rule of thumb to stay in touch with people, right? Nurture those relationships, figure out a day in the year in which you just send thank you notes to people so you stay top of mind. But in interviewing, of course, send a thank you note and do it within 24 hours, we say. This can be an email thank you note. It doesn't have to be physical. We don't know where people are at these days. Make it personal, say thanks, re-express that interest. So we went over these 5 things with a heavier focus, and what we're going to apply today is the telling the story through the STAR method, the Earl method, or the PAR method, right? And then just lastly, as we're doing this workshop, we are leading up to the virtual First Generation Career Networking Fair on April 21st. It'll be inside of Handshake again, so you'll register for those times, and it allows you to connect with great employers like we have here today. And with that, I'm going to segue it back to Bree to kind of kickstart us into putting all of this into action.
Yeah, thanks for plugging that. I was going to do it at the end of the event, but you just made it super easy for me. So thank you. But yeah, thank you for that awesome presentation, Joe. I learned a lot personally, so I hope other people did too. But now we are going to get introduced to the employers that were able to join us today. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves, their name, what company they're with, their position. And then I will ask them the question, what is one thing that you really look for during interviews? So whoever wants to go first can go ahead and unmute themselves and go ahead. Or maybe Chantal, can you start?
Sure. My name is Chantel Mallory Smith. I am Chief Professional Development Officer and General Counsel at Omaha Home for Boys, OHB. And I'm sorry, what was the other prompt that you wanted?
Yeah, just what is one thing that you really look for when you're interviewing someone or someone who's working for your organization?
I would say I look for many things, but one of the things, since we work with youth and young adults, that I look for are examples of the ability to have healthy boundaries. We work with families, we work with youth. We're in the age of social media and things like that. So I want to make sure that the youth that we work with are protected and that boundaries are intact. So I usually ask situational questions about that because it is something that has come up before in the past. I also look for like confidence. If the person is confident about what they're speaking about, or if they seem like they're unsure.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. Layla, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so my name is Layla Tappy, and I'm the recruiting outreach partner with our HR department at Boys Town. I know Joe mentioned this in his presentation, which is great, but I'm going to reiterate it. Definitely, I look for someone that gives real life examples. And so an example of that could be if I ask you what kind of challenges you may have faced in the past. I want to hear how you approach that challenge and how you overcame it. So kind of telling that story, as Joe had mentioned.
Thanks, Layla. I think that leaves you, Ralph. Uh-oh, can't hear ya. Can't hear ya. Okay.
Ralph, we see that you're on the screen a couple of times. So the video that we see, it says that you're still connecting to audio. And then we do have another screen that has you on mute.
I'm
Also, maybe Ralph, where your image is, or where your picture is, on that screen, there should be a little button at the bottom left-hand corner that maybe says join audio. Then maybe my last suggestion would be under the okay.
You could also join and come back. Maybe that would be helpful. I mean, leave and then come back. Oh, said you're connected.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, awesome. Yeah, my learning curve is a circle sometimes. My name is Ralph Kellogg. I'm the Vice President of Human Resources at Lutheran Family Services, first generation college students. So this opportunity is near and dear to my heart. I think it's wonderful that this is being done. What I look for always in my interviews is a sense for people to take accountability. So even if it's something that didn't go well, if you can come to the table to say, hey, things didn't go necessarily as well as I would have hoped with whatever, fill in the blank. But this is what I've learned, and this is what I'm going to do differently, or how I'm going to approach things differently in the future. That's always great, because that to me means that there's been growth, that there's been some level of maturity and evolution. And that's fantastic to see. So that's what I look for.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm glad we were able to get that figured out. Okay, so what we're going to do next is go ahead and break into small groups. How many groups do you have us doing, Talia?
I've got us in 3. So there will be, you should have one of our employers or community partners who just introduced ourselves, 1 or 2 students to practice, and then you'll also have a member of our facilitation team in there if anybody gets stuck or needs some help.
Awesome. Thank you for doing that, Talia. So if you have any questions, just go ahead and ask right now. But if you don't, then we're going to go ahead and break into those small groups. Okay.
Bree, were you planning on, or Talia, were you planning on me in these groups?
I have you in one, but you don't have to be in one.
But like, is there somebody facilitating that room?
There is, yes.
Okay, great. I need to jump out and.
Hello. Okay, here's Chantel. Cool. All right, so I think we're all back, right? Okay. So anyone want to just throw out there how they think it went? Do you think you were able to get something out of this and kind of follow that method that you were taught by Joe?
Yeah, I really like the STAR method. That's really good. I really love that.
Good. Good. Employers, how do you think the students did? Did it go well? Good.
They did awesome. Way better than some, people with work experience and life experience. I've interviewed some people who have been in the workplace for years that didn't do that well. So good job. You both were, I only had 2 people so far. Is it only 2 students in here? Okay.
Yeah,
So
we
then
had
I got
some
to have
earlier.
both of you. Gotcha. So you both gave really good examples, and you were both really confident, did a good job of answering multi-level questions or questions with multiple components. Just wonderful job all the way around. Yeah, I think the staff there is prepping you very well for what you'll have coming out, especially I interview people from entry-level positions all the way to executive level positions, and some people just don't have interview skills. So you all did really, really well.
Thank you.
That's great to hear. We hope that UNO is preparing their students for the real life, but you never really know until you're put into this position. So I'm really happy to hear that the students did well, and I really hope that you were also able to get something out of it, which it sounds like you were. So that makes me so happy. I guess that's really it, unless anyone else had some concluding thoughts. But I was just thinking if the employers could maybe send out their emails if students have, like in the chat, if students have questions or want to follow up with you about something that you talked about, that would be really helpful. But we just really appreciate you joining us today. taking time out of your day. It's the lunch hour. So hopefully you're able to get something good to eat and apply what you've learned in the future. So I hope you have a great day. And that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone so much.
Yeah,
Thanks for your
thank
time.
you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. Thank y'all so much. It went well. Until next time.
All right. See ya.
Bye-bye.